All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you live and around the world on the Starcom Radio Network and the X Zone Broadcast Network. Give us a call right here at Master Control 1-800-610-7035. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV, and our main website where you can listen to the X Zone live, as well as 724-365 replays, www.xzoneradiotv.com. You know, for the past month, I've been talking about the Alien Cosmic Expo that's going to be happening in Brantford, Ontario this weekend, June 26, 27, 28. But I just want to say again that no matter where you are in this great big world of ours, as long as you have access to the internet, you too can be part of the keynote speaking series that is going to be held in Brantford, Ontario. Heather and Joanne, the two organizers of the Alien Cosmic Expo, are putting the keynote speakers from the Grand Ballroom on pay-per-view. Now, there's 3 days of speakers. You can either buy the entire weekend or each day. For example, on Friday, this coming Friday, the first speaker is Michael Horn, followed by Jason Quitt, Patty Greer, Grant Cameron, and then the grandfather of ufology himself, Stanton Friedman. Day 2, which is Saturday, June the 27th, Grant Cameron, the Honorable Paul Hillier, Victor Vijani, Stanton Friedman, again Paul Hillier, and then Jason Martell, who I had the pleasure of speaking to last night. And I've known Jason for 21 years, my lord. And then day 3, Sunday, January the 28th, Len Kasten, Sandy Mack, Michael Telstar, and then the final speaker for the 2015 Alien Cosmic Expo is going to be Stanton Friedman. What a lineup. Now, once again, for all the information on pay-per-view, visit www.digitalbroadcastnetwork.ca. And for all the information on the event itself and how you can get there, what's going to be there, it's 3 days jam-packed alien, UFO, dowsing, hypnosis, and much more at www.aliencosmicexpo.com. Oh, geez, it's going to be a great time, and we're looking forward to meeting a lot of the members of the X Zone Nation there. My guest this hour is a lady I have had the pleasure of having on the show a number of times. She is one of the most interesting people I know. Her name is JUDIKA ILLES, and she is an independent scholar, educator, and author of several books of folklore, folkways, and mythology about the subjects of magic, the occult, divination, diverse spiritual traditions, witchcraft, and the paranormal. Now, she is the author of 4 popular encyclopedias: the Encyclopedia of 5,000 Spells, the Element Encyclopedia of Witchcraft, the Encyclopedia of Spirits, and the brand new Encyclopedia of Mystics, Saints, and Sages. Her other books include Pure Magic, Magic When You Need It, and the Weezer Field Guide to Witches, as well as the Weezer Guide to the Paranormal. Joining me now is the one and only JUDIKA ILLES. And JUDIKA, welcome back to the X Zone.
Thank you for having me, Rob. Thank you.
It's always great talking to you. You are one busy lady.
It's like the Morton Salt Roll. When it rains, it pours.
So tell me about your latest book.
This is actually, the Encyclopedia of Witchcraft, I was able to, it's actually a book that was out in a earlier form, but I was able to bring it up to date, which was because books that have been out for a while, especially reference books, time goes by and they get a little dated. I was able to update things, and that's always,
right.
I think, for a writer, such a privilege to be able to do that. So I was able to update. The Encyclopedia of Witchcraft is a kind of a guide to all things witches. It has magic spells, and it has religious philosophies, but it's also witches in entertainment and witches in history, and especially the witches in entertainment. There's, when I first started writing that, there were hardly any witches on television, and now they're all over the place.
I guess the most famous witch that I know of is Samantha from Bewitched.
And still my favorite.
Wasn't that a great show?
Oh my God, I love that show. I love that show. And I watched it as a child, and I put it on for my children, and they loved it too.
Samantha Stevens,
I still watch the reruns.
Jeez. So who are some of the other witches in entertainment these days?
Well, the interesting thing with Bewitched is when Bewitched was first on, Samantha was, the very clear heroine, and Dora, her mother, was, those were the days of the nagging mother-in-law jokes, and she was originally set up to be, the comic foil. She was the annoying mother. But as people have aged, as the original viewership has aged, Dora has really come to be a favorite.
Really?
With a lot of, the older I get, the more I appreciate Dora.
Well.
Bewitched, I think, is still a favorite for a lot of people. A lot of people love Charmed.
Yeah.
You have witches showing up now in shows that aren't specifically about them. There's sort of witchcraft arcs of True Blood, witchcraft arcs of, what is that show? American Horror. So witches who were once very rare. Samantha, I don't know if people realize how radical she was as a character, because up until then, witches had been played as, at best, just ugly and creepy.
That's right.
And here, Samantha, who is so normal and beautiful and ethical and kind. And so that was a really, I think that has influenced the modern witchcraft movement and the way that, people who might not consider themselves witches, but how they perceive witches. That was absolutely just radical. I'm sorry.
No, go right ahead, dear. I was just going to say my producer just told me that he believes that in a couple of the episodes of Game of Thrones there were also witches.
Yes, although there are more in the books.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot more magic and spirituality in the books of Games of Thrones. They're really big books, and they have the room to get into the details. I thought that in the first season, the first or the second season, there is the witch who is with Daenerys, who she brings in to try to heal her husband. That was an amazing portrayal. And I don't know if anybody has seen recent episodes of Penny Dreadful. Penny Dreadful had an episode. It was a flashback to one of the characters and her experiences as an apprentice witch, and it's essentially the whole episode. Very profound, very well done, very profound. Both entertaining but also food for thought, and nuanced in a way that you didn't see previously.
Why is it that witches have had a bad rap throughout history? If it wasn't for witches, we wouldn't have naturopaths. Because
absolutely,
when that's what I love about talking to you. We can just cut right to the chase and get to the matter of facts.
Yeah.
I still don't understand it, Judika. Why witches?
My theory?
Yeah.
My theory is it is in the the word witch derives from a root word that is related to wisdom. And people who are attracted to witchcraft or the magical arts in general tend to be curious. And, among the animals that are associated with witchcraft are magpies. They kind of, they have magpie brains. They're independent, and they want to know, and they're curious, and they don't like having someone tell them, as soon as I see a list of banned books, I want to read them all. You ban a book, I want to read it. And that is very much, people who, the witchcraft community is not monolithic. They subscribe to different religions, or there are atheist witches, and there are people who practice in different ways, and there's all sorts of diversity in that community. But I think the shared characteristic is independence and a curious mind, and maybe a little, that independence borders on anti-authoritarianism.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think in any kind of authority, whether it is secular or religious, tends to want to, get rid of those witches. They ask too many questions. They preserve, it's not just naturopaths, but any kind of herbalism. A lot of that information was preserved by people who, whether or not they would have called themselves witches, maybe we, from our perspective, would call them witches. A lot of old spiritual banned information, banned knowledge tends to be, it's a conservative type of mindset, so they kind of hold on to that old wisdom, and I think that's what gets them in trouble. Too many questions, not enough obedience.
I also think that the religious leaders also found the witches, or those who did not follow suit, a threat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Historically, when a region has been conquered, especially indigenous regions, the new authorities tend to remove the shamans, because there is that witches and shamans, beyond anything else, they are of service to their communities in an independent way.
Right.
And that doesn't always, it doesn't always jive with authority. And I think it's in a modern political way, one of the bellwethers, if you want to see if a society is open-minded and free, is to see how do they treat their magical practitioners. Because authoritarian states do not treat them well, whether they are fascist or religious or communist. Any sort of, extreme authoritarian state will not tolerate any sort of magical practice.
And, of course, magic is something that the masses do not understand.
Well,
yes or no?
One of the reasons, you're right. No, you're 100% right. One of the reasons I wrote 5,000 Spells is so the masses would understand. It's essentially magic for the masses. I don't write in, there are books you read that the language is, witchier than thou, and how obtuse can I be? And, because if I'm so magical, you shouldn't be able to understand me. And I think that's a mistake. I think it's very important for the masses to comprehend, because what we don't comprehend, we fear.
That's right.
So it is important to understand it. It is the oldest human art. There are very few things that if you found yourself any place in the world at any time in history that you would be able to converse with people. Everybody understands what magic and witchcraft is. Everybody understands a ghost story. There are things that really cut across all kinds of boundaries, and those are special things. And so we should, whether we practice and whether we really approve or disapprove, we should at least understand.
JUDIKA, what is the difference between Wicca and witchcraft?
Wicca is a religion. It is based on the teachings of a man named Gerald Gardner, who drew upon old Celtic and Anglo-Saxon traditions to create a modern modern variant. Witchcraft, that's a loaded question. It's a controversial question because these are words. You have to people. You say the word witch, and people think all different kinds of things. Witchcraft, the simplest witchcraft, practical witchcraft, is the practice of the magical arts, or the practice of divination, or the practice of, some people would consider mediumship a form of witchcraft, although I guess that's something people would argue about. There are people who are, there are people who are now, who could be very opposed to that. But Wicca is a religion with its own rules. Do what you will, but harm none. And it is a religion that I think its practitioners would like to take its place among all the religions of the world. It is a very beautiful religion that is based on the wheel of the year, the turning of the seasons, being in touch with the earth and the planets, and we've just passed the solstice in the northern hemisphere. It's a summer solstice, and that's Sabbath. People will celebrate and do their rituals. Witchcraft, there's a lot of different kinds of witchcraft because there are witches from all over the world. There are witches who practice different religions. There are Wiccan witches. There are also non-Wiccan witches. There are various schools of magical practice. There are people who identify as Christian witches, and I know that raises hackles too. But there you have it. If that's, I don't argue with people. If someone tells me they are what they are, then that's what they are.
Well, when you look at some of the religious philosophies, including Catholicism, you light a candle, you pray to a saint.
Yeah.
Or you receive the body of Christ at the Eucharist.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It is the same thing.
There are a lot of witches who love their saints.
Exactly.
And more controversy, but there are pagan witches who invoke saints, and they receive miracles too, even though maybe these same saints, while they were alive, were not tolerant, and would they have performed those miracles for people of other faiths while they were alive? Maybe not, but I'd like to think in the afterlife we're all more tolerant.
When we look at Christian holidays such as Christmas,
it
has a whole slew of pagan rituals in it. The Christmas tree.
Puritans,
the Yule.
Banned Christmas.
Pardon?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The Puritans in the colonies, the British colonies, they banned Christmas celebrations because they recognized those pagan.
It seems that as long as it goes with the flow, and you can kind of turn your head and say, well, that's not really, what's wrong with having a Yule log, or why not bring the tree into the house? And we know Christ wasn't born on December the 25th, but it was a great marketing ploy to try and get the pagans to go over to Christianity.
Yeah, it was the festival of Sol Invictus, the sun.
And then for all the people who are dead against witches, pagans, and the list goes on and on and on. Come October 31st, what do? Celebrate Halloween.
It's such a wonderful holiday.
I think it is.
I do. I enjoy it.
Yeah. In fact, I really believe that Halloween now is sponsored by the American and Canadian Dental Society.
Absolutely.
They should give you a scraper with every bag of candy that they sell you, so you can scrape your child off the roof, and a toothbrush. There you go.
I used to teach in an after school program in a public school in Los Angeles, and a holiday that is very close in date to Halloween is the Mexican Day of the Dead, November 2nd, which is becoming much more popular in the United States, especially in California, where there are many. I mean, it used to be part of Mexico, so the traditional is very at home there. And one of the things that you do is you make sugar skulls, and these are skulls that are made with molds that you use sugar to make. They're pure sugar, and then you decorate them, and they're very pretty. And I had done them, and I had done them with adults, and I had done them with my children who kind of had the candy didn't appeal to them because they were, I never forbade them from having, candy sometimes, so it wasn't a big deal. So they decorated these sugar skulls, and it was fine, but I did them in the classroom, now realizing a large number of these kids were forbidden to have any sugar. And these kids it never occurred to me that these kids were consuming pure sugar, and I sent them, I thought I was going to lose my job. I sent them home 6 o'clock to their parents, all hopped up on sugar.
So some might say you cast a spell on their kids.
Oh, God, yeah. That was I taught mythology and multicultural studies, and it was essentially after school babysitting grades K to 5, and I would tell them stories, I would tell them fairy tales, and I would tell them myths, and they were the best. They were my toughest audience, these 5-year-olds who their parents would come to pick them up at 5:30, and they would tell their parents they had to stay until the end of their story, and that was the best confirmation that I was doing something right of any job or position I have ever had, because children are very honest.
Judika, when is the first recorded spot in history where witchcraft is mentioned? How far back does witchcraft go?
It goes back. I mean, it's one of the earliest things. I want to say maybe with the Sumerians.
Wow.
There are spells, and there are sort of exorcisms against demons. It's very ancient. There are I don't know which is the most. There are ancient Egyptian stories of spellcasters doing sort of horrific things, acts of transformation. The Bible has the woman of Endor, which I think is so interesting because in the Bible, when Israel gets its first king, Saul, one of the first things the king does is remove the witches, and the witches have to go. And then within a few verses, the king is in trouble, and what does he do?
Calls the witches?
He asks his men to go find him. I think the actual translation is a bone-conjuring woman. What I love about that is that he, even though that they've been banned, he knows they're still out there. And when the other, when the more legitimate forms of divination aren't working for him, he goes to a witch, and she does what he asks her to do. She's not presented as a fraud, and she's not presented as evil. She feeds him, and she's kind to him, and I've always liked that. But there are old Greek stories, old Egyptian, thousands of years.
What's the difference then between a wizard and a warlock? I believe that the warlock is the guy in charge of the coven.
I think the real difference is semantics. Wizard is a very neutral term. They both have a male. The implication is that they are male, and that's controversial because a lot of male magical practitioners would prefer to be called a witch too. So witch used to be exclusively female, but now it's become sort of a more gender neutral word. There are male witches, there are female witches. Wizard tends to be male, and wizard is pretty neutral. Wizard has a literary quality to it. It's neutral or positive. Merlin is a wizard.
Exactly, yeah.
Harry Potter is a wizard. And wizards, wear robes and are smart.
But didn't Harry Potter also ride on a broom?
Yeah. Yeah. Warlock is a fighting word, and that is very current. Warlock, and that may also be a matter of etymology, whether it's a Scottish word or a Scandinavian word. Warlock has been having a renaissance. Technically, warlock, if you go with the Scottish origin,
right,
and you mean oathbreaker, and a lot of male witches do not like the word warlock, and it used to be something, if you called someone a warlock, they would kind of bite your head off. I am not a warlock. Warlock, because it implied a liar or somebody who is deceitful, but what it actually, it was, in the early years of Christianity in Scotland, people who were baptized and were ostensibly Christian, but were really either were backsliders or were really surreptitiously practicing magic, they were breaking their oath to the church. So they weren't actually breaking their oath to their fellow witches. They were breaking their oath to the church, but it has a negative connotation, and some people don't like it. On the other hand, it may have a Norse origin, and it may refer to a word that means something like protector of the community. And so there are people who, and that's much more positive.
Yeah.
And so there are people, especially people who adhere to northern traditions, the heathens, who actually think that the word warlock is positive. And it is something that, it's a word to be careful with, because it does raise strong feelings. Do you remember in the movie Bell, Book, and Candle, Jack Lemmon, who it was one of his first screen appearances, is introduced as a warlock? It's a fun movie for those who haven't seen it. It's an old movie. Kim Novak, James Stewart, and Jack Lemmon, and there is a character who is presented as this expert on witchcraft, and he's this world authority, and he's consistently wrong. I mean, he's sort of the butt of humor in the movie. And I'm never sure if did they knowingly put the word warlock in there to sort of make him look foolish, or did that just happen?
Good question. Let's ponder it over this commercial break. Exonation, our special guest this hour is Judika Illes. Her website is www.judikailles.com. Illes. How do you pronounce your family name?
No one pronounces. It's a Hungarian name, and it's really pronounced Illes, and you can't. No one, even I, don't pronounce it correctly. I usually pronounce it Illes, but whatever anybody calls me is fine.
The beautiful, talented, sensationalistic Judika Illes. How's that?
Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll be back on the other side. Once again, Judika's website is www.judikailles.com. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone, a place where people dare to believe, dare to be heard Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. until midnight on the Starcom Radio Network and X Zone Broadcast Network. We'll both be back on the other side. Don't go away.
Back in Victorian England, a famous theologian posed a perplexing riddle. Why are the two top personalities in the Bible tagged with the numbers 7 and 11? Academics agree the answer is found in the stunning discovery of a hitherto secret Bible structure explained in a new book called The Genesis Grid. The discovery is so simple that preschool children could illustrate it. Certain claims are hugely controversial and may offend some, but at the X Zone, we've studied this awesome new book and agree with one expert, and I quote, "These discoveries appear to be beyond coincidence." So who or what hid this wonderful pattern in the Bible, and what might they do next? Find out more, X Zone Nation, and read reviews on www.genesisgrid.co.uk. That's www.genesisgrid.co.uk.
Have you exhausted all traditional means of healing without success? Are you experiencing communications through ghosts, angels, or even extraterrestrials and want to validate these experiences? Or would you simply like to speak with someone who can help you find your life's purpose? I'm Dr. Joseph Mara, and I'm offering my services to humanity at this time through consultations. These consultations include angel card readings, guided meditations, life coaching, and energy healing. If you desire clarity of what may appear to be unexplainable phenomenon, then contact me through my website at aguidinglight, spelled LITE.com, to schedule your consultation today. Until then, I offer you love, light, and laughter.
Fartlets, fartlings, pongies, and honkers. They have so many names, makes you go bonkers. Rear tempest, butt bubbles, bottom burps, all aside. Why does it smell like a little rat died? Hail the fart, whenever, wherever, whoever. Its existence actually enriches our lives because it gives us those unforgettable moments that we can all recall again and again that are always good for yet another laugh. A new expose on farting. Get your copy of The Endearing Fart by Eileen Dover at www.theendearingfart.com. Are you considering calling a psychic to read your situation? Then consider David Champion, a psychic medium for more than 20 years with thousands of readings under his belt. David Champion will make you feel comfortable. He has proven to be honest and accurate. He's a straight shooter. There's no guesswork. What he sees is what you get. While he is a medium, most of the calls focus on relationships. Not only love, but work, school, neighbors, and more. Need help with finding a job and preparing for the interview? Are you dealing with people who are obstacles in your path? For more information, go to davidchampion.com. $1.50 per minute paid by credit card with a minimum of 30 minutes. For your reading with David Champion, call 1-877-702-8598. That's 1-877-702-8598.
Little children aren't the only ones afraid of the dark. Millions of soldiers return from war zones with PTSD, anger, frustration, fear, and loneliness, much of which surfaces during the darkness of the night. You have the chance to change the lives of these American heroes. Songs and Stories for Soldiers.us provides free MP3 players for these men and women. With a list of 3 million songs in 16 different styles, 100,000 audiobooks, and 30,000 old-time radio programs, every veteran can find something to soothe and comfort them at no cost. All our players contain an 8-hour audio program designed to help veterans fall asleep. With 1,500 plus vets now participating, it's our goal to deliver 10,000 audio players this year. Go to our website at songsandstoriesforsoldiers.us. Help us help a veteran make it through the night.
My name is Michael Telstar, Canada's leading mentalist from Toronto, Ontario.
Hi, my name is Splenda, and you're listening to my dad, Ron McConnell, on the X-Zone.
This is Psychic Dorothy from St. Catharines, and you're listening to Rob McConnell.
Hello, my name is Holly Reeves, an astrologer from Astro For You, and you're listening to Canada's #1 paranormal radio show, The X-Zone, with Rob McConnell.
Welcome to The X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back, everyone. This is The X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. JUDIKA ILLES is our special guest, www.judikailles.com. And before we get back to JUDIKA, I'd just like to send out a hello to Ryan Miller of Miller's Auto Detailing in Niagara Falls, Ontario, Canada. They are the official auto detailers of the X-Zone radio TV show Cruisers, as well as all our vehicles here at rel-mar McConnell Media Company. These guys do a spectacular job. So whether you're in Niagara Falls, Ontario, Niagara Falls, New York, or anywhere throughout the St. Catharines, Thorold, Welland, Port Colborne, that part of Ontario, and you want the best car detailing service, go to their website, www.millersautodetailing.org. JUDIKA, thanks very much for joining us. Always a great pleasure talking to you, my dear friend. Let's get back into the philosophy or the physiology of witchcraft. You like that effect?
Yeah.
Thanks very much. Let's start with the pointed hat.
Yeah.
What's behind that? Like, what's the story? Is it because
really,
they were dunces in school and it carried over into witchcraft? Or is it the other way around?
I don't know. If I tell you, maybe they'll stop using them. There, a lot of witchcraft symbols derive from its origins. If you can envision the first witches, you know, we take everything for granted now. We're so cynical, and everything is, everything is familiar, and we're so smart. But once upon a time, if you can imagine people coming into new territory, and they had to learn all the plants, and they had to learn all the dangers and all the wonders, and who learned them and who transmitted them, the witches, and fertility, the ability to reproduce, whether people or animals or crops. It was vital. People's lives depended on this. And so there's a lot of sexual imagery. It's sort of shorthand for genitals, not in and if you go into ancient Indian religion, you have the Shiva lingams. It derives from that sort of philosophy, almost like the pre-religion of before there was religion. This is that real primal sort of spiritual, physical beliefs. But they're not intended to be pornographic or to be titillating, but to generate this fertility power. It's the antithesis of what people used to call or still call the evil eye. And what does the evil eye do? It has a withering force. Things die. The fruit dies. Women miscarry. People can't have children. The cows have blight. That is the effect of the evil eye. And the counteracting force is that force of witchcraft. And so triangles are the upward pointing triangle indicates the male generative principle, the downward, the female. If you look at carpets, you'll often find these symbols, old like Oriental carpets. There is the shorthand of symbols that are intended to raise a kind of energy. Cauldrons with broomsticks. The stick, being the male part, and the actual broom, the little skirt at the bottom, being the female part. And so you'll see a lot of those combinations of symbols that are very, that have become shorthand for witches. Once upon a time, they were a shorthand for a kind of power, and that power became associated with the witches. And so now you see the hat, and you think of a witch or a wizard. The big cauldron, it's the cauldron of transformation, the cauldron of generation. There are all these ancient Germanic myths of the goddesses with these gigantic cauldrons where the babies are. The babies are swirling around waiting to be born.
All right, so the cat. There's always cats when it comes to witches. Is that because the witches that are depicted are usually elderly ladies who are spinstresses and they're basically sociological outcasts and they need company, so they have cats?
It's a cat's independent nature, I'd like to think. It's a cat's independent nature reminds people of witches. Cats are actually a relatively late association with witches. In England, and you'll still see it, it's hares. Because cats took a long time to get from North Africa to Italy to the various, distant parts of Europe. A lot of scholars think that the rites of Dionysus, the Greek god, he had devotees who are known as maenads, and the depiction in True Blood is nothing. That has nothing to do with the historical reality of maenads. And maenads were associated with Black Panthers. the big cat.
Oh, I was going to say the group in the States, but I'm glad you rectified that.
They were associated with these big, sleek black cats, and there is some theory that the maenads were eventually suppressed in Rome. Ancient Rome was not pagan Rome was not a witchcraft-friendly society. People have a tendency to blame Christianity. It all went downhill, after the Christians took over. But actually, the Romans and the Greeks were not particularly tolerant of any sort of magical practice. And there are some theories that is the first official witch hunt. And fleeing maenads may have wandered into different parts of Europe in small bands where they continued their religious practices, and maybe there were no longer panthers anymore, but that association with cats remained. And it's that association with cats is pretty true wherever there are domestic cats. They're associated with witches. Different animals in different parts of the world. In Africa, hyenas are associated with witches, which I find very interesting. Hyenas, owls, crows, very specific to snakes. And snakes have traditionally been associated with healing also.
And snakes have also been affiliated with the Garden of Eden, which also plays, there's a similarity between the nakedness and the snake and the premise of the Garden of Eden when it comes to witchcraft as well.
Yeah. And of course there are all kinds of legends that Adam had a first wife, Lilith, who left him before Eve was created, and there are, all sorts of stories about Lilith either being the first witch or the first vampire or both. So they're all interesting.
Well, I'm sure if you ask 15 guys who are recently divorced, they're all going to come up with a unique adjective for that person they just left. But when it comes
they could be relieved.
Exactly, that's true. That's true. Candles.
Yeah.
Once again, I briefly mentioned candles in churches where people light a candle and they pray to a saint. But in witchcraft, what is the relationship to the candle and, let's say, a spell? And I know that the different colored candles have different significance for different occasions.
Yeah. Yeah. Although you can always use a white candle because a white candle is like a blank slate.
Okay.
So if you can't, and there's a lot of personal associations. Usually a green candle for money, or a red candle for love, a brown candle for justice. But those are also personal associations. And if you can't find a red candle, you can always use a white candle. The theory behind candles is that nothing ever disappears entirely. So what happens when you burn down a candle and it's gone? Where did it go? And the theory is that the candle has gone into the atmosphere to reach the powers that be with your desires and your goals and your intentions embedded within. And so a candle, you just don't light it and let it go. You hold it and you focus on your desires. Every magic spell has a goal. There is something that somebody desires that will be accomplished. And so you see your goal, and you may, there's all kinds of techniques to, you can have a simple candle, you can decorate the candle, you can carve names in a candle. If you do a healing candle, you can carve the name of the person who, you would like to be healed in it. It can become very elaborate, or it can be very simple. And then you burn it and you let it go. You let that intention and that goal out into the atmosphere, hopefully to affect the change that you desire.
Unless you're like me, as a child, I used to love to take my Crayola crayons that were wax and kind of melt them on a hot light.
Yeah.
Boy, did I ever get myself into trouble as a kid.
Did you?
God bless you, Mom and Dad. I love you so much. I'm sorry for all the gray hair and the headaches. But I'll tell you something. Karma's got me back. A spell. Could we say that? You know that the movie The Secret and the book The Secret. You know how you put up a picture of something that you really want, you really desire.
Yes.
Could we say that is a spell of some sorts?
There is a very fine line between the power of positive thinking and spell work. And there is some resentment within the witchcraft community that a lot of things that are presented as, new thought and New Age philosophy, it's really witchcraft without the word witch attached to it. Yeah, I mean, vision boards also. You could. It's a very, very fine line. And maybe that fine line is important because there are people who have very negative associations with the word witch. I mean, I have this discussion with people all the time. And if that word bothers you, and if the thought that you are, performing witchcraft will prevent you from because you have to have that clear focus of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And if it prevents you, you can call it whatever you want. If it makes, the important thing is achieving your goal, regardless of what it's called. In English, we only have one word, witchcraft. It summarizes all sorts of things.
Yeah.
In Encyclopedia of Witchcraft, I have a dictionary of words from other languages. Other languages sometimes, in Hebrew, there are 3 or 4 different words for types of witches. And, other languages also, they're very specific about what kind of practice this is, what kind of witchcraft. And so, you need to be able to accomplish what you need to do in a way that you are comfortable with. Because why do spells not work sometimes? And sometimes it's because we're not, it's like driving with the parking brake on.
Yeah.
We're not comfortable. And so you have to be honest with yourself before you can sort of send these spells out into the universe, because a spell is a request. A spell is a request, a demand. That spells often work very well when we're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
You have a disaster and you just can't go there.
This is just. Then what is the difference between a spell and a prayer?
The classic difference is that a prayer is a request and a spell is a demand.
That's
it?
The
classic difference. Yeah.
Boy, do I see similarities growing.
Yeah. Oh, very close.
Oh boy.
And, a lot of witches do invoke saints, and in very similar ways. They light candles, and some of them will go into a church to light a candle. Some of them will do it in a home altar, but I know a lot of Catholics with home altars too.
Would a voodoo practitioner fall into the category of a witch?
They might. And despite what True Blood... Was it True Blood? American Horror. One of them had a war between witches and voodoos, and that's not historically accurate. Marie Laveau, who was known as the Pope of Voodoo and is the most famous and prominent American voodoo practitioner, and someone who I think really changed the way voodoo both developed and was envisioned from outsiders. She was considered a witch by many people. I mean, she was a voodoo witch. If you remember Dark Shadows,
yes,
the old TV show, Angelique was identified, the woman who cast the spell on Barnabas to make him the vampire. She was identified as a voodoo witch. It was the magic that was practiced in the islands. So a lot of it is semantics, and there are voodooists who would be very offended by that because voodoo is also a religion, and with hierarchies and spiritual traditions, and it is a religion that is tolerant of magical practice. But there are people who would be, I'm aware when I say that there are people who would be offended by that, and then there are other people who embrace it. It's a large and diverse and contentious community with people like to argue with each other, and people have strong opinions, and independent opinions, which takes us back to why do witches have a bad reputation? Yeah. Everybody's got an opinion. But
in today's society, when everyone has their equal rights, are witches getting stronger? Are there getting more and more people who are getting into witchcraft?
Well, it's more in some places. It's more public. Mm-hmm. It's easier to get into it. I will be teaching a class at the Holy Rose store in Raleigh, Durham, the first weekend in August, and you can go on the internet and you can see signs and you can buy a ticket, and we don't have to hide in the back. Yeah. It's not secret. We're not, the police aren't going to come and chase us away.
That you know of.
Yeah, as far as I know. But, in that sense, it is much more open. There are people are talking about their experiences and talking about their practice. We have come out of the broom closet. Yeah. I don't know if there are necessarily that many more, but we're certainly more public. But that is in the U.S. and in Canada and in the UK and in parts of the world. But in parts of the world, it is still to be branded a witch, whether or not you are one. For someone to call you a witch is very dangerous. India, South Africa.
Judika, as always, when you're with us, time goes by so fast, my friend. Yeah. Please don't be a stranger. Come back again really soon. I love talking to you.
Rob.
And thank you for spreading the word.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night now. Exo Nation, Judika Illes was my guest this hour. Her website is www.judikailles.com.